Hey nerds, just a quick note before we dive in. I made a little resource for you. It's called The Dark Room. It's a short, honest little PDF. There's no funnels, there's no affiliate links, just something that I wish someone had sent me when I first started freelancing. It's part armor on the shoulder and part kick in the ass. For example, there's a page for when money is down, aka you're broke. It'll give you some encouragement and then some tough love, followed by some quick action steps that you can do in the next 5 minutes to get started. Then 3 questions for you to think about as you strategize how to move forward. You'll get it instantly when you sign up for my newsletter. I'm calling it Field Notes. It's a no bullshit, no spam newsletter, just some helpful insights, recaps of podcast episodes, and extra content that I think you will find interesting. The link is in the show notes. Now, with that being said, let's get into this week's episode. It was just past 1 a.m. in March 2020 during the height of the pandemic. I was in my backyard during a clear San Diego night. I was sitting at my patio table, lit only by the moonlight and the sharp glow of my iPhone screen. My AirPods were in, and the Clubhouse app was open. And then came the voice. Patrick, you're not really an artist. You're more like a technician. It hit like a punch to the throat. Not because it felt true, but because it didn't. Not to me, not then. The guy who said it, his name was Alex. He was a photographer from New York. We'd known each other for a while, at least a year. We talked a bunch. We had some rapport. He's generally a smart guy. He's thoughtful. He runs his own business, which is pretty impressive. He has a day job, and he sees photography first and foremost as an art form, which I respect. But we've always had different philosophies, especially when it comes to photography as a profession, and more specifically, commercial photography. We saw things a little differently. We still do. I had just shared some images that I've been working on, some polished commercial work from Taylor Guitars, where I worked, a few campaign shots. It's the kind of work that you would get hired from. It's clean, colorful, controlled, corporate. Your work is sharp, he said. It's beautiful even. Technically impressive, but I wouldn't call it art. And I remember thinking, bullshit. And I usually don't argue unless I'm convinced that I'm right. And let's be honest, I'm usually right. And in that moment, I was sure I was. Because I do think a lot of commercial work is, in fact, art. Maybe not the soul-bearing, paint yourself in blood kind, but there's honesty in it, at least some of it. There's vision, there's craft and aesthetic and tension and purpose, even when it's done for a brand. So I pushed back. 30 minutes of defending my images, listing clients, Grammy-winning artists, trying to explain that just because something pays and there's a project scope doesn't mean that it's empty. Well, it's beautiful, Alex said again, but it's not you. If I showed these images to 10 people, he said, would any of them say, that's Patrick Four's work? Or would they just say, that's some good commercial photography? That's when I snapped. Fuck you. Just because it was shot for a brand doesn't mean that it isn't art. He didn't respond. There was just silence. The room got kind of awkward. And eventually I closed the app and I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the beautiful California clear sky, trying to convince myself that Alex was full of shit. And I did. for a while. But here's the thing about insults like that. The ones that sneak past your defenses. They don't always hit right away because of ego. Sometimes they just sit there. They're quiet, slow burning in the background. They haunt you. Weeks passed and then months. And somewhere in the mess of time and reflection, I started to admit maybe he wasn't completely full of shit. But the truth is, I really can reverse engineer just about anything. I can study the masters, and on some level, I can mimic a Leibowitz portrait. I could echo Lindbergh's tonality. I can break down compositions and rebuild them for a client. But that doesn't mean that I think like them or I am as good as them. It doesn't come from the same raw, internal, authentic place. I can even make beautiful, effective, emotionally resonant work for a brand. And I believe that really can be art. But it doesn't always come from the deepest corners of me, the deepest parts of my soul. It doesn't always carry my fingerprint in the way that it's unmistakably mine. And that conversation didn't flip a switch, but it did crack something open. It made me start asking a much harder question. If I'm not just a technician, then what am I actually building? My name is Patrick Four. This is the Terrible Photographer Podcast, and this is episode 17 I'm calling The Technician. So it was August of 2018, and I got the call. I remember I was walking into a movie with my family, and the Taylor Guitars HR department called me to tell me that I just got the lead photographer position. Taylor is a major acoustic guitar company based here in Southern California. You've probably seen one, even if you didn't know it. Zach Brown plays a Taylor, so does Phineas. And a young artist, up and coming, you might have heard of her, Taylor Swift. It was a dream gig. It was a steady paycheck. Big name artists, creative control, or so I thought. And for a while, I'd actually believed that I made it. I had shot images that appeared in Rolling Stone and Guitar World. I had my own photo studio, and I had the backing of a global brand. I was respected, trusted, and valued. Then came a product launch. The creative director handed me a reference deck, images someone from higher up had seen and liked. My job, as I was told, was to match the vibe. Not just the vibe, the same lighting, the same type of car, the same type of model, same type of location. And they didn't want my ideas. They wanted an echo. And against my better judgment, I did it. And I actually found a somewhat matching location. I rented a vintage car. I cast the perfect model. And I managed to recreate someone else's vision, right down to the fucking color palette. And when it went live on storefronts and magazines, splashed across the brand's website, I did not feel good. I did not feel proud. It felt hollow. Was the work good? Yeah. It was clean. It was polished, technically solid, but it was not mine. I knew how to make it. I even knew how to make it better, and I would argue that it was better. But the soul of the work, it was borrowed at best and stolen at worst. My fingerprints were on it, but none of my DNA. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't necessarily being paid for my perspective. I was being hired for my precision. And that's what a lot of commercial work is. It's not always about vision. It's about execution. Make it fast, make it cheap, make it clean, stay on brand, don't complain. But it's also where I started to crack. Because being trusted isn't the same as being seen. Being respected isn't the same as being fulfilled. I thought being good at execution meant I had an identity. I thought shooting for prestige meant I had prestige. I thought being a technician with taste made me an artist. But I'd become a very expensive echo machine, reflecting trends and mimicking styles, serving up visual comfort food that looked important but tastes like nothing. And here's what I didn't understand at the time. You can't be trusted and still feel disposable. Respected and still feel empty. Valued and still have no idea who the fuck you are. And the work multiplied. There was new campaigns. There was more deadlines. And I delivered every time. On schedule, on brand, on point. But somewhere in the process, I stopped asking why I was making these images, and I started focusing on only how fast could I put them out. Burnout wasn't a bonfire. It was a slow gas leak, filling the room quietly, waiting for a spark. Mine came on a Thursday. I was behind schedule. The art director didn't like the angle that I shot. Something about everything wasn't right. And he wanted to get it done before he went on vacation. And for me, the thought of taking a vacation was so foreign. I might as well have been planning a trip to Mars. And by 4:30 p.m., I was in the parking lot, crouched behind a dumpster, trying not to pass out. My chest felt crushed. My hands would not stop shaking. And that was the beginning of the end for my career at Taylor Guitars. I left Taylor in October of 2022 with no plan, no parachute, just a taste of gasoline in my throat and the feeling that I couldn't shake. Something had to change. So, month 3 of freelancing. There's no work. There is no money coming in. And my inbox was a wasteland of unused pitches and polite rejections. And I'm staring at another email titled Brand Collaboration Opportunity within the same hopeful tone as the first date text. And just like a bad Tinder match, I already knew how this ends. In silence. The broken promises hurt the most, right? All those enthusiastic conversations on my way out of the door at Taylor. We should definitely work together. I'll keep you in mind for projects. You're going to kill it out there. But then radio silence. There's not even rejections. But then out of nowhere, this small agency in town offered me a gig. $650 for a 2-location fitness shoot for their brand. The product was a jump rope. The kind of thing that you would see on a late night infomercial promising beach bodies in 30 days. It was a 2-part shoot. It was first warehouse product lifestyle photography in the morning, and then urban lifestyle shoots in downtown in the late afternoon. You think I'm exaggerating, there was no budget. There was only the crew from the agency, which is the producer and an assistant and an account executive. But I said yes because broke creatives don't always get to be picky. And let me remind you, $650. And I should have asked more questions. Questions like, how many talent? What's the lighting situation at the warehouse? Do you have permits for the outdoor shoot? What's the usage? Instead, I excitedly packed my SUV with every C-stand and light that I owned, which wasn't enough, and drove to this warehouse across town, hoping that my enthusiasm would compensate for my lack of preparation. The warehouse looked pretty plain, just a basic warehouse. Concrete floors, industrial lighting, and a couple of incredibly fit models who look like they would rather be anywhere else. And I made it work, barely. I often pride myself of pulling rabbits out of hats, and as photographers, we have to do that sometimes. The product shoots were serviceable. The models looked strong and confident. They did a great job. But I knew, even as I was shooting, that this was not my best work. I was problem solving, but not really creating. The afternoon was a little bit better. It was downtown San Diego, warm, late afternoon sun, but I didn't have permits. We didn't have any grip help. It was just me, one camera and one lens, trying to make magic happen on some concrete steps of a convention center. And the images looked pretty good. I was overall happy with them. And later that night, when the account executive asked for the raw files, I just opened my MacBook, attached their hard drive, and copied my card full of raw images over. There is no contract, no licensing agreement. And I will say they butchered them in post, and I wasn't happy. Now, I will say I like some of those images. Some of those images are literally still in my portfolio as we speak. Later that month, I was telling a very seasoned photographer about this shoot. He was a Los Angeles commercial veteran, the guy who shoots for companies like Eddie Bauer and MasterCard and Vanity Fair. And he asked me point blank how much I charged. And I told him $650. And I could tell he's usually very kind, very soft-spoken, but he got a little angry. He said this to me. He said, "You're not just cheapening your work, you're cheapening all of ours. Every time you undersell yourself, you drag the whole industry down. That $650 rate tells every client that this is what photography is worth. And it's not just about you, it's about every photographer who has to compete with that race to the bottom." And that conversation hit harder than the $650 gig itself, because it was true, and I knew it was true. I wasn't just failing at business, I was also failing at integrity. Craft without conviction is just labor. And I was tired of laboring for the crumbs. This is where I need to tell you about Conan O'Brien. Yes, that Conan O'Brien, the comedian. Not because his story is my story, but because his story shows what's possible when everything you thought you wanted gets ripped away. Here's a guy who spent his entire career building toward one goal, hosting The Tonight Show, the crown jewel of late night television, the job that he had dreamed of since he was a kid making Super 8 films in Massachusetts. And he gets it. And then 7 months later, as you probably know, it's gone. Yanked out from under him in a corporate shuffle so brutal, it played out in real time on national television. Network executives in boardrooms deciding Conan's fate while he cracked jokes to keep from crying. Most people would have imploded, thrown chairs, burned bridges, filed lawsuits, and spent years nursing grudges. Conan didn't. He walked out with grace. Yes, a big paycheck, but class. He cracked jokes while bleeding. And he said this, and I will never forget this, and I've really sort of taken it as a personal mantra.
Thank you enough for the kindness to me. I'll think about it for the rest of my life. And all I ask is one thing, and I'm asking this particularly of young people that watch. Please do not be cynical. I hate cynicism. For the record, it's my least favorite quality. It doesn't lead anywhere. Nobody in life gets exactly what they thought they were going to get. But if you work really hard and you're kind, amazing things will happen. I'm telling you, amazing things will happen. I'm telling you, it's just true.
He said that in his final Tonight Show monologue. Not bitter, not defeated, just real. And here's the thing that I think matters. He didn't spend the next decade trying to get the Tonight Show back. He didn't write a memoir talking about all of his grievances. He didn't play by the same rules that he had just chewed him up and spit him out. He reinvented, not by trying to win back what he lost, but by building something else, something with fewer rules and more soul. First, a tour, then a podcast that became a phenomenon, a travel show that let him be weird and curious, a production company, a community of people who got his particular brand of absurd brilliance. Conan stopped chasing the machine and started making his own. And now, he's built an empire that's completely his. No network executives, no corporate overlords, no one who can walk into a boardroom and decide his worth based on demographics and advertising revenue. And that's the path. Not back, but forward. Not compromise, but creation. And watching Conan's journey taught me something that I'd wish I had learned much earlier. Sometimes what feels like a career death is actually career birth. Sometimes losing the thing that you thought you wanted most is the only way to find the thing you actually need. So fast forward to now. 3 weeks ago, to be exact, rent is late. The electricity bill and the water bill is glaring at me from the fridge like a disappointed parent. My savings and checking accounts has the kind of balances that make you laugh just to keep from crying. And I've sent more emails this week than a VC-backed tech bro with a new app for dental scheduling. Emails with subject lines like creative collaboration opportunity, commercial photographer based in San Diego, and following up on our previous conversation. Spoiler, there was no previous conversation. Monday, 15 emails to creative directors and agency producers. 0 responses. Tuesday, rewrote my capabilities deck and keynote like that was the missing piece. Wednesday, rebuilt my music industry landing page, and added more photos of people holding guitars because apparently I think that's the secret to inbound leads. Thursday, I wrote a 6-part email sequence for a welcome funnel that no one is currently in. And Friday, I designed a lead magnet called How to Plan a Killer Photo Shoot, even if you've never done one before, and watched 0 people download it. Which, by the way, you can literally go to my website right now, patrickford.com, and download it if you're interested. I've built funnels and I've launched newsletters. I've created downloads with smart-ass names. All of it designed to lure the algorithm gods into blessing me with relevance. And sometimes I feel like I am standing in the middle of a busy sidewalk in Times Square, screaming and dancing and doing everything I can to get anyone's attention. And people just walked right by. Relevance doesn't come. Not when you need it, not when you ask nicely. Saturday morning, and I'm sitting at the same dining room table, staring at my MacBook screen, and I had this moment of clarity that feels like a punch to the face. I've become everything I used to make fun of. I'm creating content about creating content. I'm hustling to hustle. I'm performing authenticity instead of just being authentic. And I start to wonder, maybe this isn't just about photography anymore. Maybe I've spent the last 15 years becoming a very talented mirror, reflecting the desires of clients and art directors, brands, and giving them back their ideas with better lighting and sharper focus. But not once have I stopped to ask the question, who am I when there's nobody else in the room? And what do I have to say when no one's listening? What would I make if it was just for me? And the answer is uncomfortable. But maybe that's the point. So honestly, I'm just letting go, not of photography, but of the fantasy. The fantasy that good work will save me, that talent will carry me, that good lighting and clean composition will be enough, because they're not. I'm building something else now, something that's mine. This podcast, for starters, a book that's written and completely terrifying, consulting work that lets me use my brain instead of just my camera. And I'm trying to build a revenue stream that doesn't depend on someone else deciding if I'm worth hiring. Not because I'm giving up on photography. I'm not. I'm still committed to being a commercial photographer. I just accepted a couple of new jobs last week. But because I'm finally growing up about it, I'm developing a more honest and healthy perspective about my relationship with it. I am interested in developing a voice, not just a portfolio. Okay, so this week's Light Leak, I want you to burn the map. Maybe you've been told that if you're just get good enough, technically sharp, commercially polished, clean and clever, then it'll fall into place. The gigs, the recognition, the feeling of finally making it. But maybe that's all a lie. Because here's what I'm learning. Slowly and painfully. Technical skill isn't the same as a voice. Prestige doesn't mean purpose. The work won't save you if you're holding tight to the fantasy of the clients that'll fix everything, the massive paycheck that'll eventually come, the portfolio that will finally get noticed. the version of you that's always performing and never at peace, then maybe this is your moment to stop, to burn the map, to let go of the story you were handed and ask a better set of questions. What would you create if no one ever saw it? What would you chase if there were no likes and no followers and no awards? Who are you when you're not auditioning for a job you didn't even want in the first place? You don't need to quit, but maybe you need to deconstruct, to scrape it down to the studs and figure out what's actually yours underneath it all. The truth won't hand you a career, but it might hand you back your voice. Stay curious, stay courageous, and yeah, stay terrible.